Hello, friendos. Emily here with some very, very poor timing. So I completed this build probably about a month ago. It required a lot of playtesting, which sort of delayed the actual upload process. I wanted to make sure this was a well-functioning house before I unleashed it on an unsuspecting public. So I built myself this lovely farmhouse, and then I spent a couple months making sure everything was working fine. And then Sims 4 Seasons comes out, and looking at everything that's in that expansion, I just really wish my timing was a little different, because don't get me wrong, I love this build. In fact, I probably consider this one of my better builds. Oh, excuse me. Like, a lot of planning went into this build. I actually grabbed some graph paper and plotted out the house. That's how much work I put into this farmhouse before I built it. Which made me know sometimes when I go through and double check and double count all the squares to make sure they're the size that, you know, they're supposed to be. But there's a lot of things that came out in Seasons I want. For example, I'd really like to make use of all the new plant items that they came out with. I'd like to definitely use one of those sprinkler systems. I would like a little bee keeping alcove. So what I think I'm going to do with that is at some point when I do get Seasons, because I haven't actually gotten it yet, I will do a live stream. And during that live stream, I'll actually update this particular house and get, you know, full farm experience. But for now, I frankly think I did really good making a farmhouse with the a bit more limited tools I had available. I would consider this my current magnum opus build. It's definitely the best I've ever done with roofs. It's definitely a lot more complex than I usually go for. It's a very big build. It's on a 64 by 64 lot. It's got size for big family. I think I did well with having it feel personalized, the way I like having things look lived in. I'm just very pleased with how this build came out, which is part of why, you know, I'm not just going to set it aside and update it with Seasons and then release it. I want you all to see what I was able to do with my limitations. So for this build, I did look up farmhouses, and one thing about farmhouses is they're kind of outdated in how big they are. So one of my challenges was actually figuring out what to do with all the rooms. Fortunately, I was able to figure it out, and I'll probably go more over which room it's for after it's made. But at the time, I was like, okay, I've got 3 rooms that have no purpose yet. What do I do with these rooms? Because these are old houses. They were around when people were expected to have like a room that was all these parlors. This is the smoking room. This is the ladies' parlor that you go in when the men are smoking. But we don't really set aside rooms for that anymore. If you're gonna have a smoking area, usually it's outside. Actually, they should make a smoking area type thing. Just ashtrays everywhere. So I tried getting in that sort of vibe of this is an older house, and, you know, now a current family lives there. I actually haven't put much thought into whether they inherited the house or purchased it. I suppose that is a thought for another build. I should consider something like that in the future, like a house that's been in the family for generations. I know in actual houses, your windows aren't always like symmetrical, but it bothers me when they aren't. So going through and counting all the windows and making sure they match up, it's an unnecessary detail that I'm always doing. So on top of having a farmhouse, I have 3 fields. There is a field that is an orchard, there is a field that is growing like all the crops and such, and then there's a field that's sort of decorative with crops. Like, I do have things quote unquote growing there, but they're just like flower items and bush items, things that can look like they're crops that are growing but don't actually require any care from the Sims. Which again, that's part of why I'd really like to get that Sims Seasons expansion very soon, because the element of the sprinklers, I think, would definitely make it easier to have these big fields. I also utilized a number of mods. I think I have a mod that has it so you don't have to so you don't have to water trees, and I have a mod that sort of allows you to debug the plants. Because, you know, while I was playtesting things, I didn't necessarily want to keep up all the chores of taking care of all the plants every day. So I did cheat a little while I was playtesting. Please don't judge me too hard. So there are 4 bedrooms upstairs, and there's 1 ground level bedroom. I decided to make the parents' bedroom the ground level bedroom because when I lived in a farmhouse, that's what my parents ended up deciding to do. They claimed the ground bedroom for themselves. I don't know if it was a convenience thing, or knowing my mom, it was probably a bit more of a awareness thing. My mom is one of those people who likes to, she wants to sleep on the side of the bed that's closest to the door. She wants to be the one who can sort of know when something is happening. And I think it's kind of part of her protective nature. So I think that would be probably why she'd like a ground level bedroom, so that she can know what's going on. And sort of, be in control of the situation a little by having an awareness of it. Other rooms that are on the ground floor, there's a living area, there's a parlor, because I couldn't resist one parlor. There's a laundry room, there's a study, a bit more of a reading area / hallway type thing. There is a dining room, that's a nicer dining room, but it's not the one that gets used every day. It's the one that you have for when you have friends over or family over. It's the big one. But there's actually a dining table in the kitchen. That's the one that the family would use every day. I don't know if that's a thing that people do as much anymore, but I at least know with like my grandmother's house and, that sort of, I don't know if it's a geographical or generational thing, but there were 2 dining areas. The one for the casual and the one that was more of a when you're having people over dining area. I also made sure to have a quote-unquote kids room, which is probably the one I had the most fun decorating. It's just more a secondary TV area, because I made this a family of 5 people, and the idea that all 5 people want to watch the same thing on TV at the same time, it's a little silly. It also lets the kids, play video games while their parents are, doing whatever. I know when I was living in the farmhouse, I'm pretty sure I had a TV in my room, like a small one. I don't remember. But that was my solution rather than a kid's room. And then I made all these crop lines that I probably spent a little too much time making sure they were totally straight, but to me it was really important. Even if, honestly, the tree probably takes so much space up that you don't even notice if the ground isn't perfectly straight underneath it. It's probably not necessary. But when I'm graphing things out like this, it's nice. I think a huge part of why I wanted to make a farmyard is actually Stardew Valley. I enjoyed, along with enjoying playing Stardew Valley, I really enjoyed using the Stardew Valley planner. That was, I liked taking the tool they had to plan out what the farm would look like, and usually there was a bit of a geometry, that's the word. There was a bit of geometry in it where I tried to make sure everything was balanced, and that all the numbers were correct, and all the sprinkler spacing was right. And I think that kind of plotting was something I wanted to do in Sims, even though at the time there wasn't really a farming capability in Sims. Now, of course, there totes is, and I'm going to have some fun with that, because why wouldn't I? So what I'm building here right now is actually a barn / not a barn anymore. Like I mentioned, this is supposed to be an older area, but this family doesn't really have livestock, partially because there isn't any livestock in Sims, at least at the moment. So basically this barn has been turned into a guest house / studio, because while with Dad, they all live on the farm and they all work on the farm. But the mom is also an artist. She has a small little studio in the barn space, so she goes every day. You can't have someone just hiding there. But more importantly, that's the guest house. When I lived on the farm, that was during the time that I graduated and my brother graduated. And for our graduation parties, because we lived so far away from everyone else, the people invited ended up staying the night. Not just for the graduation parties, but for everything. On top of that, any family who's visiting, they need a place to stay. And we didn't really have a guest house, because that would imply that the building was much more finished than it was. But there was, like, a building that my brother kind of claimed as his own space. And during his graduation party, and any parties he had afterwards, that was where everyone stayed. In fact, sometimes during the summer, he just stayed in that place. He really liked it. It felt like his space. So that's kind of the vibe I was going for. This place where, maybe if they hired someone to help work the farm for a little, or maybe if they were having a party and they wanted to give people a place to stay the night, a family was visiting, any of those situations, they have this space that, people can stay the night in. This is actually where a lot of my playtesting came in, though, was with that space. I don't know why, but I would have a sim start making food, making some delicious, delicious food. And they'd start it. And then they'd go over to the counters in the guest house and start finishing the food there. And I'm just like, what are you even doing right now? Because can you even imagine, in real life, if you're living on a farm, and you come down and your mom's making pancakes, and you're like, heck yes, I love pancakes. Thanks, Mom. I love you. I'm so lucky to have a mom like you. And your mom's like, oh, I know. All right, time for me to finish making these pancakes. So she grabs the bowl of batter and just walks out to the guest house so she can mix them on those counters. You would be very concerned for your mom, or think that maybe she was trying to punish you for something. Like, oh, I guess I'm not getting pancakes. Did I forget Mother's Day or something? Actually, I think this kitchen in general ended up messing up with a bit because I was trying to figure out why that was happening. A lot of times when that sort of thing happens, it's because there's like an overhead item that's interfering with the Sims routine for some reason, which I admittedly don't get. I don't understand why like having a pot rack hanging above the kitchen would prevent a Sim from cooking, but I suppose that's just Sims logic. So a few things did get rearranged in between the video being built and the actual final product that is on the Sims 4 gallery. Ultimately, though, I think it is better for it. I think I ended up messing a lot with adding a couple more counters. I think I made a secondary counter area. I can't even remember at this point. I guess you'll see when you download it. If you download it. Please download it. I love this wallpaper that's in the kitchen. It's just so... It's so sort of... I don't know what the right term is, but it feels like something that would have been there for years. Something that maybe your grandmother put up back when she's still in the house. I guess we're just going with the this has been the family for a while theory now. And, it's outdated. You know it's outdated. But also, there's nothing wrong with it. Why would you bother replacing perfectly good wallpaper just because it's outdated? That's the vibe I get from it. Like, it establishes this sense of having been in the family for a good amount of time. I also love those 6-person round tables. Oh, there's a counter that I was talking about. Didn't mean to hit the mic there, sorry. So yeah, that's that particular spot. That's where I messed around a bit. So here's that fancy dining room I was talking about, where if you're having like a lot of people over at once, or maybe you're having a fancier thing, like you're meeting with your distributors to discuss the selling of your product. Guys, I may have lived on a farm, but it wasn't actually a functioning farm. It was just a farmhouse and farm space that I lived on. I have no idea how running a farm works. I'm assuming, though, that if you're running an independent business, essentially, you've got to meet with people to discuss how things are going to get done. So this kind of space, it could work as that. A nice, professional-looking meeting area. I can't believe I remembered a trash can this time. I'm so bad at remembering trash cans. There's the parents' bedroom. I'm always not sure how much I should put in a bedroom, just because I've seen a lot of lines drawn on what does go in a bedroom. I've seen people put, like, for example, I have a desk in my bedroom, but part of that is because I live in an apartment and I don't really have a workspace area. I've seen some people put couches in their bedrooms, which, you know, those look really cool, but at the same time, I personally can't see a reason for me to do that, at least not at this point in my life, because if I want to sit on the couch, I'll go out into the living room. So I think it's really interesting what different people consider bedroom furniture. I don't think I went too crazy in any of these bedrooms, though. I love that quilt on that bed. That's, again, it just feels like something that a family member made. And then the study. This is the kind of room I would like to have one day in the distant future. Like, essentially a library. Just all these bookshelves, and they all look so nice, and I can't remember why I thought I had to get rid of those couches. That'd just be so nice, just having a room designated for relaxing and reading and doing a little work. Like, it's not just an office space, it's also a library, and I adore that. I want a library. I practically have one. It's just all of our bookshelves, all of our many bookshelves are just spaced out between, like, every single room in the house. A designated bookshelf room would be amazing. I think one of my harder times with this particular room was balancing the color with the neutral, because I tend to not go super neutral, but at the same time, this is a room of work. It's not a happy fun time room, though I guess you can go on the computer and play computer games. But at the same time, you know, it's gotta feel warm and welcoming. It's not just there to, you know, this isn't the no fun allowed room necessarily. And I guess I just implied that neutral colors are not fun, which isn't really accurate. I just don't have that great of a grasp on neutrals quite yet. I think I've been getting a better grasp as I go on, though. So many. I love those mason jar lights. But again, with a lot of the ceiling lights, I've realized you have to make sure they are not too long and they're not going to cause some issues with the ceiling being like, whoop, can't walk here. My ceiling lamp is a little too long. Guess I can't do nothing. And then they walk away. I'm sorry. My fiance is very tall. He has bumped his head on many a thing. I think you can handle it, Sims. After all, that's not even going to hit your head. They're just a little longer than they should be. I feel like with fireplaces, I should make chimneys more often than I do. Like, not necessarily just putting a chimney on the top of the roof, which I'm pretty sure I do in this one, but like how with a closet space, you need to set aside that, like, 2x1 square footage to, you know, have the closet door. I feel like I should be doing something similar with the fireplace, but running it up the entire house. But at the same time, it feels silly to use that kind of space for that purpose on the second story, because from the perspective of just making a building, it feels like wasted space. I love that little nook that just has the llama game. But I've got 5 family members, and that's a 4-player game, so someone's always left out. The dog bowl and the cat bowl, because this family's got a dog and a cat, because they live on a farm, and on farms you need to have barn cats, and dogs are also super useful. But granted, with how finished the barn is, you probably don't need a barn cat either. Here's the adult entertaining room, where the adults go when the adults are over and having adult fun. I tried to make this one look a little more sophisticated, I guess. Like, that has that bar area. I feel like I see bars a lot more in these hypothetical houses than I do in actual houses. One of the houses that I lived in growing up did have a bar, and I remember my dad loved that. He was actually teaching me to bartend a little bit. He really just taught me to make the drink that he likes. That's the bartending he taught me. which was, basically just one shot of soda, one shot of whiskey. Ha! I'm a bartender now! That was my impersonation of me when I was, I want to say 12? No, I'm like 10. Somewhere in that general area, I guess. They do look fancy, though. We should have more houses with bars. Because even if you don't actually drink, they just look classy as heck. You don't have to make it an alcohol bar. You can make it a juice bar. You can make it a soda bar. You could make it a glass of water bar. Frankly, I would love to go to a friend's house and they have this bar and I'm like, can I have a drink? They'd be like, sure. We don't have much juice from. I'll be like, okay, just give me your recommendation. And they just pour me a glass of water. I would laugh hysterically. So here's that laundry room. I'd actually just gotten the laundry day stuff when I started building this. And I was very excited to go through all of it. That's why I just, you might see, set it so that only the laundry day stuff was showing. So with this room, I feel like, one, it has the same tile as the kitchen. I want to make sure that that linoleum blocking was like staying. And I guess it's one of those things where the space wasn't used for that originally. This probably would have been like, I don't know, a canning room or something similarly practical. But then in the modern day, they started using it for their laundry stuff because that was more of a thing. I'm pretty sure someone has this really nice canning mod to make a canning skill, but that's a little more game altering than I usually do for these things. Partially because I don't play the games a whole lot. Oh, got those exposed light bulbs. Maybe this is an expansion on the house. I'm trying to remember my logic that I was going for with a lot of these, because I did put a lot of thought into it. I should have written down notes of what I was thinking, so I'd have more to talk about when I was talking about these things. So since this is such a big space, it wasn't just a laundry room. I decided to also make it an indoor plant room. Because, the fact you're on a farm doesn't mean you have enough plants. So, because it has the windows, I have all these like little house plants. I try to give them all the orange terracotta type planters. So basically, someone will come in here, do laundry, check on the plants, make sure they're all watered, and then go off and do their own thing. That's the plan. That's the plant plan. The plant. That was a bad joke. Chock full. Every room should be a plant room. That's my hot take on the situation. So here's that kids room I was telling y'all about. This one was actually super fun to decorate because when I made the Sim family, the 3 kids are triplets. Not identical triplets, just triplets. And they're teenagers. So you're designing a space for someone who is for 3 people who are transitioning from kids to adults. But it's a much more recent transition than I think teenagers realize it is. So there's, on top of it being like a sort of let's try being adult space, it's also a we're still kids space. So it's like that combination of cool teenager stuff, I think I want to be an adult stuff, as well as all the kids stuff they couldn't really get rid of yet. I love that dog. One thing that's interesting with designing younger spaces as opposed to adult spaces is, in my own personal experience of someone who used to be a young person, in an adult space, it feels like you're trying to make it look really nice. When it's a younger space, you are trying to put as much of your personality into it as possible. That's why it's much more common in young and teenage rooms for like every piece of wall that you can find has a poster on it. Because why would you leave that space blank when you can express yourself just that little bit more using that? And I'll admit, I'm still personally probably much more in that stage than I am in the adult room stage. But honestly, I think it's part of why I enjoy designing these types of rooms. They're not necessarily well designed in the sense of, being a good-looking house. But I feel like they, by extension, have that personality that I'm trying to force in there. And you can see they've got all these posters, because I wasn't kidding when I said every square space. And since there's 3 teenagers, chances are each of them has a claim over a different poster. And there's probably also a lot of fighting over, like, oh my god, I hate this band. Why would you put a poster up of that? And I don't know. It's fun for me to imagine them putting this up, because it's not. When I'm building this room, I'm doing it all at once. Realistically, when it's the teenager space, it is something that is, something that's been built over the years. So we're coming up to the part where I, cut it off because it ended up being like an hour-long build. The second part will be uploaded just a little bit later in the week. In the meantime, I am going to put this up on the gallery already, just because I think y'all deserve to see it. So you can either go to the link that's going to be in the description below, or just search Valiant Attempt Gaming on the Sims 4 gallery. Then you'll be able to find this room, as well as find this lot that has this room I'm working on, as well as all the other rooms. And dear God, are there a lot of rooms. So in the next video, we're going to get the upstairs done, get the farmhouse done, as well as all the landscaping for the outdoor space. So I'll see you all a little bit later in the week, and take care until then. Bye.